A thrown spear needs you close enough to be killed back, close enough to see a face, feel a hand grab your arm, get hit yourself if you miss. A bow doesn't need any of that. You can be hidden, silent, 30 meters away, and your target never even knows you're there until the arrow's already in flight. That single shift, killing without ever entering the other person's reach, might be one of the most consequential technological leaps humans ever made. The trouble is proving when it actually happened. In 2010, Marlies Lombard examined stone points from Sibudu Cave in South Africa and dated stone-tipped arrows to roughly 64,000 years ago, pushing the origin of archery back tens of thousands of years earlier than anyone had confirmed. But here's the catch she admitted herself. A stone point used to tip an arrow looks almost identical to one used to tip a spear or a hand-thrown dart. Researchers had to build an entire forensic subfield just to tell them apart, measuring tip width and thickness, since a small, light point matches the low mass and high speed of an arrow, while a heavier point matches the slower punch of a spear. The clearest proof so far comes from France. At Grotte Mandrin, the same rock shelter where Homo sapiens and Neanderthals alternated occupation roughly 54,000 years ago, researchers in 2023 took replica stone points and actually fired them from bows by hand as thrown darts and hafted onto thrust spears into test targets. The largest points worked fine as spear tips, but the smallest ones only made sense as arrows. They simply didn't have the mass to function any other way. It's the clearest proof so far that early Homo sapiens arriving in Europe carried a weapon Neanderthals apparently never had. Actual wood is far rarer than stone. The oldest surviving complete bows come from a Danish peat bog at a place called Holmegaard. Elm wood weapons, roughly 8,000 years old, still recognizably a bow. Long, narrow, flexible limbs built around a rigid handle. Arrow shafts from Stellmoor in Germany may be even a little older. Everything before that survives only as stone points and educated guesswork. So why does any of this matter more than humans invented a new hunting tool? Because a bow doesn't just extend your range, it changes the entire risk calculation of attacking someone. A thrown spear or an atlatl dart tops out around 15 to 20 meters, and either way, you're exposed mid-throw. A bow lets you knock, aim, and release from cover, fire several times before anyone can close the distance, and retreat without ever being seen. Ambush and raiding, hit fast, vanish before anyone can retaliate, become dramatically less risky. And less risky violence, historically, tends to become more frequent violence. It's also not a weapon everyone could pick up and use well. Research comparing atlatl and bow performance found that atlatl skill plateaus fast, while bow skill takes years, something like 4, to approach real proficiency. That gap likely didn't just change hunting efficiency. Some researchers argue it reshaped who counted as a skilled provider or a capable fighter within a group at all, adding a new axis of status the group didn't have before. And the just a hunting tool framing runs into a problem the moment you look at the bones. At Nataruk in Kenya, the massacre site from our very first episode, at least 2 of the victims had stone projectile points still lodged directly in the skull and thorax, evidence researchers read as a coordinated attack using multiple weapon types at once, not an accident. At Jebel Sahaba in Sudan, the 2021 reanalysis that reframed the site as decades of repeated small raids rather than one battle was built partly on newly identified projectile impact marks, arrow-shaped wounds appearing again and again across generations of burials. And at San Juan ante Portam Latinum in Spain, archaeologists recovered 52 arrowheads at a single Neolithic violence site, several still showing impact damage from the moment they struck bone. Then, in January of 2026, came something stranger. Chemical residue analysis on arrowheads from a South African rock shelter called Umhalatsana turned up actual plant toxin traces, a poison sourced from a bulb still used by traditional hunters today, on points roughly 60,000 years old. It's the oldest confirmed poison weapon ever found by more than 50,000 years. A poisoned arrow doesn't even need a clean, lethal hit. A graze is potentially enough. The bow didn't just add distance to violence. Apparently, almost from the start, it added a way to make even a glancing wound eventually fatal. All of that is still raiding scale violence, small groups, ambushes, a handful of bodies at a time. Then, roughly 3,200 years ago, in a river valley in northern Germany called Tollense, the scale changes completely. It's considered Europe's oldest known battlefield. Well over 150 individuals recovered so far, out of an estimated fighting force that may have topped 2,000 people, many of them young men, some still carrying arrowheads embedded in their bones. A 2024 study traced the metal and stone in those arrowheads back to their source regions and found weapon styles from as far away as Bavaria, hundreds of kilometers south. This wasn't a fight between two neighboring villages. People, or at least their weapons, had traveled a very long way to be there. From that point, the bow only gets more deliberately engineered for exactly this purpose. Composite bows built from wood, horn, and sinew show up in Mesopotamia by around 2500 BC, short enough to fire from a moving chariot, powerful enough to punch through armor at range. Egyptian chariotry carried them into battle at Kadesh. Assyrian armies built entire campaigns around massed archery. Steppe cultures and eventually the Mongols turned mounted archers into the most feared strike force in the pre-modern world. So was the bow invented to hunt and only later turned toward people? The dates don't really support a clean separation. As far back as the evidence goes, Nataruk, Jebel Sahaba, all of it sits well within the same broad window as the earliest confirmed arrow use itself. There doesn't appear to have been an innocent chapter. The moment humans could kill from a distance without ever being seen, we seem to have started doing it to each other almost immediately. And we've spent the next 60,000 years refining exactly how.